back, my friends, for another video here on the channel. Today we're going to be explaining the end of The Last of Us Part 2. It's kind of an ending that's, I guess, sort of getting mixed reactions, but I think a lot of people at the end of the day kind of feel confused with the story. They kind of feel a little bit lost once they finish the game. Kind of messes with your head in different ways, man. The game is crazy, whether you agree or disagree with the direction that they took the story in. It's definitely well written in a way that's, again, it really messes with your head. And so we're going to also talk about what this ending screenshot means. So basically, when you beat the game, the new title screen looks like this, and we're going to explain exactly what that new title screen means as well. But before we jump into it, I don't have to say it, or I shouldn't have to say it. Obviously, we're going to be diving into deep spoilers. If you haven't beaten the game, or if you don't want any spoilers, click off the video. Now is your chance to click off the video before we jump heavy into the spoilers. If you're still here, I'm assuming you don't care about spoilers, and we are going to jump straight into it. So to understand the ending of the game, you have to understand everything that leads up to the very end of the game. So first of all, what is the game even about? Well, I mean, it's pretty clear. The game is definitely about, you know, vengeance. It's about the obsession of seeking said vengeance. And, you know, the whole thing of seeking vengeance starts off with trauma. And then it's kind of like just this big cycle of agony, and, you know, someone, you know, going through some kind of trauma and seeking revenge for it. And, you know, we can kind of see that in kind of, I guess, the swirl that is Abby and Ellie. Right, so essentially the game starts off, Abby kills Joel. You at the time don't have any idea why she's killed Joel. All you know is it's a brutal death. It's horrific, and it's very intense. You end up learning that obviously Abby was part of the Salt Lake City Fireflies. Her dad was the surgeon that was supposed to be operating on Ellie to get the cure, who Joel ended up killing. Obviously, Joel barged in. The doctor pulled a knife on Joel, said, "You're not going to take Ellie." And so Joel shot the doctor because, you know, Joel didn't want Ellie to die, so he saved Ellie. And it's just become this big circle of violence and trauma and revenge. So because Joel killed Abby's dad, Abby wanted revenge. And that's kind of the whole thing. That's why her physique is so bulky. That's why she looks so freaking jacked, more than most dudes, because she's basically put everything aside, even her own physicality. She doesn't care about her own appearance. She doesn't care about anything. All she cares about is having her body in shape enough to be a machine that can take on Joel once she encounters him, because her plan is to encounter him, and, you know, if there's any kind of resistance, obviously she wants to be fit physically to be able to fight him. So that's kind of the whole idea. She's really obsessed with this revenge, and then once she kills Joel, that obsession goes to Ellie, with good reason, of course, right? And so then Ellie is obsessed with seeking revenge for Joel's death, and the whole thing, it just becomes this crazy cycle of, you know, well, this person went through some traumatic thing, and then they're obsessed with seeking revenge, and it's just like this crazy, again, bunch of like agony and anguish, and it's insane. So obviously Ellie goes on her journey, and at one point you end up seeing Abby's backstory and a lot of her life, and then she meets Yara and Lev, who I think kind of in some way not necessarily justify what she did to Joel, but I guess in maybe some sense redeem her, because I guess Lev kind of brings out more of the soft side of Abby, and so you kind of see that side of things, and, you know, you can see that Abby, you know, generally isn't a horrible person, right? She does have a big heart. She does care, and, you know, if you think about it from her shoes, if you think about it, you know, aside the fact that we as fans love Joel and Ellie, and we know Joel and Ellie, if you just think about it, you know, without any, you know, biased lens, think about it the other way around. If we didn't know Joel and Ellie, it would make complete sense, right? It would make complete sense what Abby did. We'd probably even be rooting for her on her side, like, yo, this guy killed her dad, like, yeah, get revenge. You know what I mean? Think about it. But because we love Joel, because we love Ellie, you know, it's kind of, we have a different feeling at the beginning of the game. But then again, they do a really good job kind of showing you Abby's backstory and, you know, what she's all about. And again, I'm not saying it's justified whatsoever. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I'm saying is that, you know, we get a good look on Abby's side of things. We get a good look at who she is as a character, and why she did the things she did. And, you know, the fact that she let Ellie and Tommy go, it just proves that she was only after Joel. She's not necessarily, you know, out to kill everybody that stands in her way. She just wanted revenge for the man who killed her father, which, again, I don't think is justified, but you know, there's a valid explanation behind that. So by the time you get to the end of Abby's story, it is now the end of Seattle day 3. We're back to the theater where Abby's confronting Ellie. She brutally murders Jesse and, you know, seemingly murders Tommy, which thankfully she didn't. Just left him paralyzed on one side of his body and blind in one eye. Now you got to think everything leading up to that, right? Abby has no idea. She didn't see any of the confrontation between Ellie, Owen, and Mel, for example, right? Which happened at the aquarium, which we know that Mel was pregnant. And if you see both sides of things, then as a player, we know Ellie didn't want to kill a pregnant woman, right? Everything just kind of escalated. She just wanted to know where Abby was. She wasn't trying to kill them, and it all turned around on her. Owen tried to grab her gun, and she ended up shooting Owen, and then obviously Mel came after her, so she defended herself against Mel, and then she ended up killing Mel, who's a pregnant woman, and then, you know, Ellie had a complete freaking breakdown because that's not what she wanted to do. But from Abby's perspective, she walks into the aquarium. She sees that Owen is dead. She sees that Mel is dead, who's a pregnant woman. And that looks really, really bad, right? So you got to think about it from that perspective as well, right? So it's kind of like, again, if you're looking at it without a biased lens that we love Ellie and we love Joel, then it's kind of like, you know, both sides of it kind of make sense, right? You got to think what they're seeing, their perspective things. We know Ellie didn't mean to do that. We know that Ellie, you know, completely broke down, had a mental breakdown after doing that because that's not what she meant to do. But Abby doesn't know that. On Abby's side of things, Ellie's just a cold-blooded murderer, right? So she kills Jesse. She shoots Tommy. Thankfully, Tommy lives. And then they have, you know, their scuffle and stuff. And even after that, she's about to kill Dina, who's also pregnant, and she says good because she wants the same revenge because, again, she feels Ellie just murdered a pregnant woman cold-blooded. But then Lev is there to talk some sense into Abby, right? And so that kind of is how that plays out. And again, Abby lets Ellie live. That's the second time that Abby lets Ellie live when she could have very easily killed Ellie, right? You got to think about that, right? As messed up as it is what she did to Joel, she kind of saved Ellie's life 2 times because she could have killed her. If she wanted to kill her, she would have, right? But she let her live twice. Okay, that's very important. So by the time we get to the very end of the game, Ellie ends up going back after Abby, right? There's this whole thing. She you know, tells Dina that she has to go and Dina's not cool with it. And there's a whole thing on that side of things, which we talk about in a different video. But the point is, Ellie gets to a spot where she finds that Abby has been captured and basically tortured with Lev for a month by some crazy, you know, freaks. And then she finds her on a beach tied to a pole she was left there to die, basically, right? With Lev, alongside Lev. She cuts Abby free. Abby frees Lev. Ellie's there kind of feeling, you can see the confliction in her. She doesn't know what to do anymore. She feels so conflicted. She sees Abby basically in this state. And, you know, I'm sure she knows that that's twice Abby let her live, right? That she could have killed her. And then they walk off to the beach, and Abby says there are boats this way, like literally helping Ellie. And once they get there, Ellie has a quick flashback to Joel's, you know, brutal death. And that kind of sparks something in her to go and say, no, you're not leaving. And then they have this big scuffle. You know, Ellie starts going, she's so obsessed that she's willing to stick a knife to Lev's throat to force Abby to fight her. Like, she's that obsessed with revenge. And at this point, you know, it's kind of like, as the player, you're conflicted. Is it worth it? And so basically they have this scuffle, and then Ellie has a flashback to Joel on the porch playing the guitar. And one of the important things to note is that the way things kind of left off with Ellie and Joel is that, you know, she didn't forgive him basically for what he did, right? One of the last conversations they had was, I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you did, because the whole thing was that, you know, Ellie felt like her life had purpose and meaning, that she was going to be the cure for humanity, and she felt like Joel took that away from her, and because of that she had a hard time forgiving him. And one of the last conversations, again, like they had, is that she didn't know if she could forgive him, but she would like to try. And then you can kind of see that, right, when she's out on patrol with Dean at the very beginning of the game. They're talking about that, you know, she's going to go watch a movie with Joel that night, and obviously that never happened, sadly. So they were trying to rebuild the relationship and you know, find some kind of, I guess, reconciliation. And so the fact that they, you know, she never got to really fully forgive Joel. Things kind of ended on a little bit of a sour note with Joel. That's, I guess, part of what fuels her anger and obsession, and is the fact that, you know, she needs to seek justice for Joel because things ended bad, right? I mean, either way she would have been in this situation, but that just adds fuel to the fire. You know what I mean? And so she goes on this whole journey, and then, like I said, she just kind of lets Abby go. Why? Because she thinks back to Joel, and she's like, I should have just let go of my anger. I should have just let go of my hate, my rage, and whatever. And at this point, she, I guess, finds an opportunity to let go of that hate, let go of that rage towards Abby and towards Joel, and find forgiveness in her heart, which is honestly a very, very, very big thing for someone to do. And as the player, you could be obviously on the side of like, what is she doing? You know, kill her, kill her. But if you really think about things logically, as much as we love Joel, as much as we hate the fact that Joel got brutally murdered, if we think about things logically, does it really make sense for her to continue and to end Abby's life, especially in this moment? If you're honest with yourself, you'd probably say, no, it doesn't. And there were some people that at this point were saying, no, Ellie, don't do it. Because you have a change of heart, because you see this side of things. So again, it can be very, very hard to really process that idea of Ellie just letting Abby go and forgiving her after, you know, what she did to Joel. Especially as a player who we love Joel and Ellie so much. But again, if you look at everything without, you know, a biased lens, then it makes sense for Ellie to just finally let go of it and forgive Abby and Joel in that moment. It's almost like, in a way, she's forgiving Joel and letting go of that anger as well by forgiving Abby. You know, it's a very complex, you know, thing to really wrap your head around. And I'm not gonna lie, it took me a long time to really even try to process this. And even now, I'm still kind of like, oh man, it's still like this difficult thing, because it really is. But at the end of the day, it makes Ellie the bigger person, and in a sense, she's kind of figuratively letting go of that anger towards Joel that she had, and forgiving him when she was never able to forgive him before he died, right? And so, you know, I think it's a very, very deep ending when you really think about it, process it, and break it down. But at face value, obviously, it's easy to be taken back and be like, what the heck, man? Like, none of this makes sense. But again, if you really break it down and analyze it, you know, I think you can come to terms with it, and you can kind of, you know, make sense out of it. I think one of the other reasons that Ellie went on this journey, right? And obviously a main factor in it was obviously seeking revenge for Joel's death. But I think another reason is that you got to think about this. In the first game, what was Ellie's purpose in life? Her purpose was to get to Salt Lake City and become the cure for humanity. But after that was taken away, she had no idea what her purpose was. She just basically was going through the motions, and she almost felt, I guess, like she had a meaningless life. She was trying to find purpose in her life after that was taken away. And I think that's also a reason why she was so upset with Joel, and, you know, why she was trying to figure things out. She just was very frustrated, because now she's like, what's her life's meaning, right? And so I think a big part of it is obviously, you know, now she had a meaning, right? Again, which was to seek vengeance for Joel's death. She had a purpose to do that, and of course she became obsessed with it. You know, there's a little bit of the fact that, you know, she was pissed off at what they did to Joel, and you know, that turned into an obsession of, you know, revenge, and the fact that, you know, it gave her something. It gave her something to pursue, right? So I think you got to also take that into consideration as well. And then by the end of it, you know, she realizes that, you know, forgiveness is a lot heavier than revenge. You know, it's kind of poetic in a way, right? Ellie went through so much. She lost so many things. She did so many things, all on this, you know, road of obsession. And it's easy to feel kind of, especially as a player, at the end, to feel kind of like, well, this was a waste. It was all for nothing. She didn't get her revenge. But think about this, right? At the end of it, we can see that Ellie finds more, I guess, a bigger self in her, right? She finds a bigger person inside of her. She finds the way to forgive, right? Not just Abby, but even Joel, who is, you know, obviously not here anymore. She can't physically, you know, tell him that she forgives him, but she finds it in her heart to forgive and find some kind of level of resolution, you know? And I think that's the big thing and the big takeaway of this. And I think that's very, very big and very deep if you really, again, break it down and analyze it and really process it and think about that. And again, it's very poetic if you really consider all that. All right, so I want to leave you guys with this. The title screen. The title screen changes, right? And that in and of itself is very poetic. Look at this first title screen. It's a boat in the fog, and, you know, it's kind of the scene we get when Abby and Ellie are at the very end with the boats. It's full of fog, and I think that symbolizes all the darkness and all the, again, anguish and agony and despair and all this darkness that both Abby and Ellie go through on their obsession for revenge. But then when you beat the game, we have a more bright looking screen, right? We have the boat on the shore, and it's an island, and you can see the storm clouds are still in the sky, but they're kind of off in the distance, and they're kind of, you know, fading away, right? And there's kind of like hope in the distance on the right side of the screen, where there's, you know, the building, and it's kind of sunny on that side. And I think that's, you know, very, very poetic, and it's very I don't know, there's just a lot of meaning behind that I think people didn't realize. And what's crazier is Neil Druckmann actually confirmed that this is Catalina Island. So it's assumed that both Abby and Love made it to Catalina Island to find the fireflies. If you guys don't know, that she basically, you know, had a radio call with them when she was in Santa Barbara, and they told her that they were on Catalina Island. So it seems like there's a glimmer of hope at the end there, that, you know, Abby and Love made it to the fireflies. And you know, obviously at the very end, we can see that Ellie went back to the farmhouse. She's left alone, and unfortunately, you know, that's sad in and of itself. But at the same time, you kind of see her walking away, leaving the farmhouse in the distance through the window at the very end. And you know, I guess what you could take away from that is, okay, sure, she's lost a lot of things, but it's also a bright looking scene. You know, it's kind of like a bittersweet looking scene. That's the kind of vibe I got. And it kind of feels like, okay, she's lost a lot, she's been through a lot, there's been a lot, but, you know, she's had, again, some sort of level of resolution. She's found some level of forgiveness and maybe even peace in her heart to some extent. And who knows where things go from there. You know, can she resolve things with Dina? Can she resolve things with Tommy and other people? I guess maybe we'll have to wait to see in part 3 what happens then. But so I know I said that last part was the end, but I do want to leave you guys with one last thing that I was thinking of when I was editing this video, and that seems to be that, at least me as a player, I've sort of figured out what has been some of my complications with, you know, processing the story. And I think it's actually the 5 stages of grief when you think about it. So you got the 5 stages, which is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And honestly, I feel like I've been through all of those 5 stages after, you know, beating the game and finishing The Last of Us 2, which is kind of crazy to think a game can put you in the 5 stages of grief. Because at first it was denial. I was thinking, there's no way he's dead. There's no way Joel's dead. He's gonna come back. He's gonna come back, right? And then it was anger. I was pissed off. I hated it. I was even questioning if I even liked the game at some points. Because I'm like, there's no way. This is like, why? And then there was bargaining, trying to make sense of it all, basically, right? Trying to regain some kind of control over this kind of situation. And then there was depression. I wouldn't say I got depressed, but I was very sad about it. I was like, dude, this is really, really sad. I think a lot of us cried. And at this point, I feel like I'm more in the acceptance stage, where I'm like, okay, you know, I'm trying to make sense of it all, and I'm starting to make sense of it all, which is what a large portion of this video has kind of been. So I did want to mention that as well, as a kind of a conclusion to this video, because I thought it was interesting that this game really puts the player in the 5 stages of grief, where you go through all these emotions as you play through the game, and even after you beat the game, you're trying to process everything that just happened. So I don't know. That's kind of my explanation for the ending of The Last of Us Part 2. Maybe you like it. Maybe you're not satisfied with that explanation. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But again, really think about it and process it, because I think if you really, really think about it and process it, you can start to make sense of it. And, you know, it's pretty deep. As complex as it is pretty deep. It's pretty heavy stuff. But I don't know. That's just my take. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like. If you disliked it, dislike it. Subscribe, guys, new for more content. I'll see you guys very soon in another one. And until then, my friends, game on. Thanks for watching.